The red sand burned under the twin suns of planet E27. Winds blew across the wasteland, lifting clouds of dust into the sky. There were no trees, no water, and no sound. Just rocks, dry air, and silence. Dane Rivers moved slowly through the desert, his boots sinking into the hot ground. He was alone, wearing a damaged explorer suit with a cracked helmet. His mission was simple: scan the surface for signs of ancient life. No one expected to find anything alive on this dead planet. He walked over a dune, checked his scanner, and frowned. A strange signal was blinking on his wrist device. It was weak, but it was real. Dane adjusted the scanner. Heat signature detected. It said the signal came from nearby, behind a pile of broken stones. He climbed over the rocks, rifle ready. But what he saw made him stop cold. Lying in the sand was a girl. She was not human, not fully. Her skin was pale blue, her hair silver like moonlight. She was naked, covered in dust and scratches, curled up like a child. Her eyes were closed. But she was breathing, barely. Dane dropped to his knees beside her. He checked her pulse, weak but steady. She was alive. "Hey," he said softly, "can you hear me?" The girl opened her eyes slowly. They were wide, glowing faintly. Filled with fear, she tried to speak, but no sound came out. She covered her body with her arms and backed away. "Crawling in the sand, it's okay," Dane said, putting down his rifle. "I won't hurt you." The girl shivered, eyes locked on him. She looked lost. Afraid and alone, Dane opened his pack and pulled out a thermal blanket. He placed it near her and stepped back. After a moment, she grabbed it and wrapped herself tightly. Tears ran down her cheeks, mixing with the red dust. She was shaking, like she had been through fire, or worse. Dane sat on a rock a few feet away. He waited, silent, watching the horizon. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Finally, the girl looked at him again. She pointed at his scanner and tilted her head. Confused. "You don't understand me, do you?" Dane asked. She blinked, then slowly touched her mouth and ears. Then shook her head. Dane sighed. He tapped his chest. "Dane," he said. "My name is Dane." She stared for a moment, then repeated softly. "Dane." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Dane smiled. He pointed at her. "What's your name?" She lowered her eyes. After a few seconds, she whispered, "I don't know." That made Dane's heart ache. She had no name, no clothes, no memory, just pain and fear. He stood up and offered his hand. She looked at it, then slowly reached out. Her hand was warm, soft, shaking. Dane helped her stand. She could barely walk. So he carried her to his explorer pod, hidden a few kilometers away. Inside, he gave her water, food, and a medical scan. The results confused him. She had both human and alien markers. Her brain activity was 10 times stronger than normal. But she was still just a girl, scared and alone that night. She sat in a corner of the pod, holding the blanket tight. Dane gave her a pillow and a soft light. He didn't ask questions. He didn't try to force her to speak. He just sat nearby, letting her feel safe. The next morning, she seemed calmer. She explored the pod slowly, touching objects with curiosity. She pointed at a picture on the wall, Dane's family photo from Earth. A man, a woman, and a young boy. She stared at the photo, then touched her chest. "Home," she said. Dane looked at her, surprised. "You know Earth?" he asked. She nodded slowly, then drew something in the dust on the pod's floor. A face, human, crying. Dane knelt beside her. "What happened to you?" he asked. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. Then she whispered one word that shook him to the core. "Fire." That night, she had a nightmare. She screamed in her sleep, her body glowing with light. The walls of the pod shook. Tools flew off the shelves. Dane rushed to her. "Nova?" he said, calling her the name he had given her. "Nova, wake up." Her eyes opened, glowing bright, her hands raised in defense. Then she saw his face, and the light faded. She began to cry. Dane held her gently, letting her cry in his arms. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now. Outside, the red." Winds howled across the sand, but inside the pod, for the first time in a long time, Nova felt something she didn't understand: hope. Days passed on planet E27. The red winds continued to blow, but inside the pod, something had changed. Dane was no longer alone. Nova was no longer silent. She still didn't speak much, but she had started to learn. Every morning, she watched Dane closely, copying his words and actions. He would say water, and she would whisper it back. He would say sun, and she would point at the sky. Her memory was still broken, but her mind was strong, very strong. Dane noticed strange things happening around her. Lights flickered when she walked past. The scanner beeped randomly when she touched metal. The pod systems sometimes rebooted without warning, but Nova never seemed scared. She was just curious. One night, Dane found her staring at the stars through the small glass window. Her eyes reflected the sky, bright and deep. "Do you remember anything?" he asked gently. Nova didn't answer right away. Then she turned to him and touched her head. Fire, pain, cold, she said slowly. "Do you remember where you're from?" She shook her head, then paused, closed her eyes, and said one word: cage. Dane felt a chill in his chest. He didn't push for more. He just nodded and sat beside her. They sat in silence, both staring at the stars. Dane thought of Earth, of his own past, of wars, orders, and the feeling of being used. He saw the same sadness in Nova's eyes. The next day, he tried something new. He connected a small memory viewer to the pod's main screen. It showed old Earth-footage cities, people, children laughing in parks. Nova stared at the screen, frozen. Her hands slowly reached out and touched the glass. "Home," she whispered. Then her body began to glow softly. Dane stood back, surprised. "What are you?" he asked, more to himself than her. Nova didn't answer, but suddenly, the screen changed. Static. Then strange symbols appeared daily in shapes. Spinning, the machine sparked. The power flickered. Nova stepped away, breathing hard. "I didn't mean to," she said, confused. "It's okay," Dane said, calming her. But inside, he was worried. She wasn't just reacting to the tech, she was controlling it. Later that night, Dane checked the pod's black box logs, and what he found shocked him. The data showed her brain activity 10 times stronger than normal. Neural pathways working like a supercomputer, waves of energy pulsing from her body, even while she slept. She's not just lost. Dane said to himself, she's something more. He opened a secret file from his Earth Command archives. Something he had saved years ago, but never dared to read. It was called Project HFY Sci-Fi. The file talked about a hidden program, a group of children created in space, not born. On Earth, they were meant to survive deep space, war, radiation, anything. But the project was canceled after multiple failures. Too dangerous, too unstable. The report ended with a list of names, all marked terminated, except one, Subject 13. No record, status unknown. Dane leaned back in his chair. He looked over at Nova, who was curled up on the bed, asleep. Her silver hair glowing faintly under the dim lights. Subject 13. He whispered, "Is that who you are?" Suddenly the pod shook. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. "Orbit alert," the system said. "Unregistered ship detected." Dane rushed to the window and looked up. A dark ship was descending, silent and massive. It had no lights, no signals. But its design was clearly military. He grabbed his scanner and saw the code. Earth Command, Black Unit. They weren't here for science. They were here to recover or eliminate. Dane turned to Nova. She was already awake, staring at the window. Her body trembling, eyes wide with fear. They found you, Dane said. Nova nodded, tears in her eyes. They want me back? She whispered. Not going to happen, Dane said, loading his sidearm. You're not going anywhere. He helped her into a coat, packed supplies, and opened the emergency hatch beneath the pod. There was an old mining tunnel. Beneath the surface, long forgotten, but it would lead them far enough to hide. Before they left, Nova looked around the pod one last time. Then she placed her hand on the wall, and the lights dimmed gently, like she was saying goodbye. They moved into the dark tunnel, lights flickering on Dane's helmet. Nova followed silently. Her steps light and careful. She reached out, touching the stone walls. Sensing something Dane couldn't see, after some distance, she spoke. I feel them, she said. Feel who? The others? Dane stopped walking. What others? Nova looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. The ones who didn't make it, the ones like me. She touched her chest, then her head. There. Inside, Dane didn't know what that meant, but he believed her. She wasn't just a survivor, she was carrying the memories of those who didn't survive. And now, Earth Command wanted to erase her, to bury the truth, but Dane had made his choice. He wasn't just an explorer anymore. He was her protector. The mining tunnel was cold and narrow. Dane's boots echoed with each step. Nova followed close behind, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The air was thick with dust and silence. They had been walking for hours. Dane was tired, but he couldn't stop, not with Earth's Command scanning the skies above. Not with Nova in danger. They reached an old shelter at the end of the tunnel. It was small and rusted, but safe for now. Dane sealed the door behind them, then powered up a small lantern. Nova sat quietly in a corner, hugging her knees. She didn't speak, but her mind was not at rest. Dane sat across from her, rubbing his face. Then he opened his datapad. He needed to know more. He needed the truth. He searched deeper into the Earth Command files. Most records were locked, but he had old access codes. After a few failed tries, the screen blinked. Access granted. Dane opened the full record of Project Echo, and what he read made his stomach turn. The project was approved by top-level commanders. It was meant to create super survivors. Children grown in labs, part human, part engineered. They were designed to feel no fear, need no sleep, and adapt to any world. But something went wrong. One by one, the children broke down. Their minds couldn't hold the power. Some went silent, some turned violent, some simply disappeared. Only one was never found. Subject 13. The file had blurry photos. One of them looked exactly like Nova. Same silver hair, same eyes. Dane looked at her. She was watching him. Silent. She knew, this was you, he said softly. Project. ECHO, Nova nodded. I remember some, she whispered. They called us numbers. They said we were tools, not people. She touched her head. I hear them sometimes. The others, the ones who didn't make it, Dane's heart ached. She was carrying their memories. Their pain, you escaped. He asked. Nova nodded again. There was fire, she said, and light. Then I ran. I don't know how I got to the planet. Dane looked back at the files. There was one more section, marked Termination ORDR. Right was recent, a command. To locate and destroy Subject 13 if found. Not rescue, not recover, eliminate. He clenched his fists. They think you're a threat, he said. They think you're just a failed project. Nova looked at him. Am I? No, Dane said firmly. You're a person. You feel, you learn, you remember. You're more human than the ones who made this file." Nova smiled softly. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. Suddenly, a sound echoed from above, distant but clear engines. Earth Command had landed nearby. Dane turned off the lantern and checked his scanner. "Drones are moving through the tunnels," he whispered. "They're close." Nova stood up slowly. Her hands glowed, ready to protect herself. "We can't keep running," Dane said. "We need to fight back." Nova shook her head. "No," she said, "if I fight, I might lose control." Dane understood. She was powerful, but that power came with risk. He took a breath, then made a decision. "There's a relay station 2 kilometers west," he said. "If we reach it, we can send a message to the outer colonies. Tell them what's happening. Will they help?" Nova asked. "Maybe not," Dane said. "But the truth will be out." Nova nodded. "Then let's go." They left the shelter quietly, moving through side paths and old mining shafts. Nova's glow lit the way, but she kept it dim. They couldn't risk being seen. As they walked, Nova touched the walls. She whispered, names soft. "Broken names. Kai, Luma, Theo. Who are they?" Dane asked. "The others." She said, "My friends. My family. They're gone. But they speak to me. Do they blame us?" Nova shook her head. They were sad, not angry. They didn't want to be weapons. They reached the relay station at dawn. It was tall, broken in places, but still powered. Dane climbed to the top and connected his datapad. He uploaded the Project Echo files, the photos, the reports, the command to kill. He added his own message. "This is Dane Rivers, former Earth explorer. I found her. She's not a monster. She's a child. You need to know the truth." Nova stood below, watching the sunrise, her eyes closed, her body glowing gently. Then the signal was sent. Dane climbed down. "It's done," he said. "Now we wait." They didn't have to wait long. A voice crackled through the station speaker. "We received your message," it said. "We're coming." Nova looked up at Dane. "Who is it?" Dane didn't know. But the voice sounded human. He smiled. Maybe someone who still believes in doing the right thing. The sky above planet E27 was no longer silent. Dark ships floated like shadows over the horizon, slow but dangerous. Their engines made a low, humming sound, like thunder waiting to strike. Dane and Nova watched from a cliff above the old relay station. He had hoped the message would bring help, but what came first was fear. "That's Earth Command," Dane said, lowering his scanner. "Recon-class ships, maybe 4, maybe more, hiding behind the ridge." Nova's eyes narrowed. "They are scanning for me," she said softly. "They don't care who else is here." Dane loaded his weapon. "We're not going to let them take you." Nova didn't answer. She stood very still, feeling something in the air. Her body shimmered slightly, the light around her growing and fading like a slow breath. "They've activated the beacon," she whispered. "They are sending a signal to my mind." Dane turned toward her quickly. "Is it hurting you?" "Not yet," Nova said. "But if I get too close, they can shut me down. Not kill. Just stop everything." Dane clenched his fists. "They built you with an off switch." Nova nodded. "Yes, because they never thought I would escape." Dane paced the ground, thinking, "We have 2 options." He said, "Run or fight." Nova looked down at her hands. "If I fight, people will get hurt," she said. "If I run, they will keep coming." "Then we make them see," Dane said. "We make the whole galaxy see who you are, not what they say you are." A voice came through the old relay speaker. "This is Commander Rael of Earth Command. Surrender, Subject 13. Do not resist." Nova stepped forward and took the microphone. Her voice was calm but clear. "This is Nova," she said. "I am not a number. I am not a weapon. I am alive." Silence followed. Then came the reply. You were created by Earth. You belong to Earth. No, Nova said, her hands glowing faintly. I belong to no one. Dane turned on the external broadcast system. Everything they said was now being streamed to nearby colonies. The truth was no longer a secret. The ships above began to descend. Troop carriers flew down like black birds, landing in the sand below the ridge. Dane grabbed his gear. We need to move, he said. They ran toward an old communications tower, once used by miners, now abandoned. It gave them high ground, and more importantly, a view from the tower. They saw soldiers spreading out. Drones scanned every rock, every signal, but Dane had shut down all tech near the tower. They're sweeping for heat, he said. If we stay low, we stay hidden. Nova knelt by a broken console, her hands resting on the cold metal. She closed her eyes, and something happened. The old screen turned on. Without power, strange shapes danced across its codes. Signals, memories, I can see their systems. Nova whispered. They are afraid of me. Can you stop them? Dane asked. Nova shook her head slowly. I can only delay them, but it will be enough. Suddenly, a sharp cry came from below. A young scout had spotted movement and was calling it in. Go, Dane said, grabbing Nova's hand. We need to reach the caves. They ran again, fast and low. Through a dry canyon filled with sharp rocks and old mining tracks, the wind picked up, blowing sand into their eyes. Behind them, footsteps, metal voices, orders shouted into the dust. Nova stopped and turned. She raised her hand, and a wave of static pushed through the canyon. The radios of the soldiers sparked, their helmets buzzed, and for a few seconds, everything went silent. They fell back, confused and blinded. Come on, Dane shouted. Pulling her forward, they reached the cave entrance and ducked inside. Inside, it was cool and dark. The walls glowing with faint blue crystals. Nova sat down, her face pale. That took too much energy, she said. Dane handed her water and placed his jacket around her. You saved us, he said. You're stronger than they'll ever understand. Nova smiled weakly. You believe in me? I believe you deserve to live. Dane said, not just survive, live. As they rested, a message came through. The emergency line. It was a colony signal, not from Earth Command. This is Station 9. The voice said, we received your broadcast. Is Subject 13 safe? Dane looked at Nova. She's here, he replied. Good, the voice said. Because you're not alone anymore. A map appeared on the screen. Friendly ships were coming. Private vessels, rebel science crews, even ex-soldiers who had once worked on Project Echo and regretted it. Nova's eyes filled with tears. They heard me, yes, Dane said. And now they're choosing you, far above the planet. One of the Earth Command ships began to turn. Inside, an officer removed his helmet and looked at the broadcast again. He had a daughter once, and the girl on the screen looked more human than any machine ever could. He opened the comm and said, one line, maybe we're the ones who need to surrender. Inside the glowing cave, time felt slower. The air was still, and the only sound was Nova's soft breathing. She sat against the rock wall, her eyes half closed, her hands resting in her lap. The blue crystals around her gave off a soft light, wrapping her in peace, but inside her mind, there was no peace. There was only fire. Dane watched her from across the cave. She had been quiet since they escaped the soldiers. Something was happening to her, something deep. He knelt beside her and touched her arm. Nova, he said gently, talk to me. She opened her eyes slowly. I remember more now, she whispered. The memories are coming back. She looked around the cave as if she was seeing it for the first time. I've been in a place like this before, she said. Long ago. Or maybe not so long. Dane sat with her. Tell me what you see, he said. Nova closed her eyes again, and the cave seemed to fade around her. She began to speak, slowly, carefully. As if the words hurt her mouth, there were others. She said, "Children like me, we didn't have names, only numbers." They kept us in metal rooms, cold and white. Dane listened, heart sinking. They called it a test, Nova continued. They made us lift things with our minds. Move fire, see through walls. If we failed, we were taken away. If we passed. They only gave harder tests. She paused, her hands shaking. I saw one boy catch fire from the inside. They just watched. Dane closed his eyes. He couldn't imagine that kind of pain, especially in a child. We weren't allowed to sleep too long, she said. They said sleep made us human. And they didn't want that. Tears ran down her cheeks now. Her voice cracked as she spoke. They said we were built, not born. But I remember crying. I remember missing someone, a woman, maybe my mother. Dane placed his hand over hers. You were never a thing, he said. You were always a person. Nova looked at him. Why did they make me? Dane took a breath. To win wars, he said. To control the unknown, but they forgot something. What? She asked. That people aren't tools, he said. They feel, they break, they hope. Suddenly, Nova gasped and gripped her head. A wave of light burst from her body. The crystals in the cave flickered, and images filled the air like a dream. Dane saw flashes, burning halls, soldiers shouting, a child screaming. Nova floating in a chamber, wires attached to her body, her eyes glowing with fear. Then a moment of escape, flames, alarms. A lab torn open by energy, and Nova running through fire. Alone, terrified, the memory ended, and the light faded. Nova collapsed into Dane's arms. Exhausted, he held her close. You're safe now, he whispered. You're not there anymore. She looked up at him. But part of me still is, she said. And now they want to put me back. No, Dane said firmly. They won't get that chance. His communicator buzzed. A message came through, encrypted and urgent. This is Colony Ship Arc Horizon, the voice said. We saw your signal. We are 30 minutes from orbit. Do you require extraction? Dane replied quickly. Yes, we have the girl. She's alive. There was a pause. Then the voice said, Prepare for pickup. Nova sat up straighter. Someone's coming for us. Yes, Dane said. Real help. But Nova frowned. I feel something else too, she said. They're not alone. Above them, in the sky, more ships arrived. Not colony ships, not friends, Earth Command reinforcements. The cave shook as distant explosions echoed across the ground. Dane looked out toward the entrance. The hunters were returning, and they were not coming to talk. He stood and helped Nova to her feet. We need to reach the landing zone, Nova nodded. I'll try to keep us hidden as they moved through the narrow canyon paths. Nova focused her energy. The rocks around them bent light slightly, hiding their movement, but it drained her, every step growing harder. Dane saw it. She was using her pain, her memories, to power herself. Each flash of emotion was like fuel to her ability. They reached the open field where the Arc Horizon was. Landing, a large silver ship touched the ground, ramps opening, lights flashing from behind. Earth Command drones closed in. They fired warning shots, then real ones. Dane fired back, covering Nova as they ran. Nova turned and raised her hands. She didn't scream, she didn't shout, she simply remembered, and from that memory came fire. A wall of energy pushed through the field. Drones exploded, systems crashed, and silence followed. Nova fell to her knees, weak but alive. The crew from Arc Horizon rushed forward. Lifting her gently, she's more than we imagined, one of them said. She's not a weapon, Dane said. She's a survivor. They carried her into the ship. Dane followed, his face marked with dust, fire, and quiet rage, as the ship lifted into the sky. He looked down one last time at the burning planet, at the place where she had nearly died, and where she had found her voice. The ship Ark Horizon rose slowly into the sky. Beneath it, fire still burned across the land. Drones crashed, metal twisted, and Earth's command soldiers lay stunned on the ground. Nova lay quietly in the medical bay, eyes half closed, her breathing slow but steady. Her body had taken too much, her mind too, but she was alive. Dane stood beside her bed, his hand resting on hers. He looked out the window as stars filled the dark sky again. A soft voice broke the silence. She saved us all. It was Dr. Alira, a scientist from the outer colonies. She had seen the broadcast Dane sent. She had risked her life to come. She shouldn't have had to fight like that, Dane said. His voice low. She's not a weapon. No, Alira said. She's proof. Proof of what? That humanity can still choose compassion over fear. Dane didn't answer. He looked down at Nova, her hand twitching slightly in sleep. The captain of the ship, a tall man with gray eyes, entered the room. "We are being followed," he said. "Earth's command is not done." "How long?" Dane asked. 10 minutes until interception. Alira stepped forward. "We need to speak to their command ship." "We tried," the captain replied. "They're not answering." Dane clenched his fists. "They're coming to finish the job." The lights dimmed for a moment. Then a strange sound echoed through the ship like a whisper. Everyone stopped moving. Nova opened her eyes. Her voice was soft but clear. "Let me speak to them," she said. Alira stepped back, shocked. "You're not strong enough." Nova slowly sat up. "I have to try." Dane helped her out of bed. Together, they moved to the communication room. A large screen showed the black ships closing in, weapons ready, no warning given. Nova stepped forward and touched the console. Her fingers glowed, and the signal connected instantly. The screen blinked, then showed the face of Earth Command's top officer, a cold, sharp-eyed man named Admiral Karras. "Subject 13, he said, without emotion. "Surrender now." Nova looked into his eyes. "No," she said calmly. "You've already taken everything from me." "You were never meant to live," he replied. "You were created for survival, not freedom." "I've seen the stars," Nova said. "I've seen what it means to feel pain, to care, to be more than what you made me." Karras didn't blink. "You're dangerous?" "No," she said. "I'm human." There was silence. Then Dane stepped forward. "This is Dane Rivers," he said. "I served Earth for 10 years. I believed in its mission until I saw what it did to her. You've built weapons and called it science. You've silenced truth and called it safety. Well, now the galaxy knows." Karras leaned closer to the screen. "You think anyone will choose her over Earth?" Suddenly, new signals appeared on the radar. Dozens of small ships coming from different colonies. Civilian crews, rebels, doctors, ex-soldiers. They weren't there to attack. They were there to protect. One voice came through the radio. "This is Captain Yell of Free Colony 3. If you fire on that girl, you fire on all of us." Another followed. "This is the crew of Starlight. We stand with Nova." Then another, and another. One by one, ships from across the system joined, surrounding Ark Horizon like a wall. Inside the command ship, Admiral Carey stared at the screen. He saw the numbers grow. He saw fear in his own crew's eyes. Nova spoke again, her voice calm but powerful. "You taught me fear," she said, "but now I teach you something else." She placed her hand on the console. A soft pulse spread across the network. Not an attack system memory. Everyone on every ship saw it. Children in white rooms, singing softly. The sound of crying behind steel walls. The moment Nova escaped, covered in ash and light. Then, the face of Dane, holding out his hand. The feed ended. The ships remained silent. Finally, Admiral Karras gave a single order. "Stand down." The weapons powered off. The black ships turned slowly, pulling back into deep space. The war was over before it began. Nova fell back into Dane's arms, her strength fading again. "You did it," he whispered. "They chose you." She smiled weakly. They chose humanity. Later, as the ship landed on a peaceful colony, Nova was greeted not with fear, but with flowers. People stepped forward with open hands, not weapons. They saw her not as a project, not as a threat, but as a girl who had suffered and survived. Elira turned to Dane. "What now?" She asked. "We let her grow." He said, "We let her be free." Nova looked up at the sky. She had seen fire, pain, and betrayal, but now she saw hope. She wasn't Subject 13 anymore. She was Nova, and she was finally home. The new colony was quiet. The sky was soft blue. The grass gently swaying in the breeze. Birds flew above. And children laughed somewhere in the distance. Nova sat on a small wooden bench near a tree. She wore a simple white shirt and soft brown pants. No machines, no wires, no scanners. Just clean air and peace. Dane walked toward her carrying 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to her and sat beside her. "You slept well," he said with a smile. "I dreamed," Nova whispered. "Not of fire this time, but of stars." "That's good," Dane said. "It means your mind is healing." She nodded, looking around at the peaceful land. "This place. It feels real." "It is," Dane replied. "It's yours now, after the battle in space." The colonies had voted. Earth Command's control was over. Project Echo files were released to the public. The world knew the truth now, and they chose to build again with Nova's help, not her destruction. Scientists came from across systems to study, to learn, but they asked, they didn't demand, they respected her. Some called her a miracle, others a symbol. But to Dane, she was just a girl who survived. He looked at her now and saw strength, not power, but something deeper, the strength to feel pain and still be kind, the strength to forgive. "Do you ever think of going back?" he asked. "To Earth?" She asked quietly. He nodded. She looked down at her tea. "Sometimes," she said, "but not yet." Dane understood. Earth had created her, tested her, hurt her, but one day she might return, not to take revenge, but to teach. Nova turned toward him. "Do you miss your old life?" she asked. Dane thought for a moment. "No," he said. "I only miss my brother." Nova reached out and took his hand. "I feel him," she said softly. "In you." That simple line brought tears to Dane's eyes. He looked at her and smiled. "Then maybe he's not really gone." Later that day, Nova stood before a group of children in a schoolyard. They asked her questions not about powers, but about dreams, stories, feelings. One child asked, "Were you really all alone?" Nova paused, then smiled. "I was," she said, "for a long time. But then someone found me." "Were you scared?" The child asked. "Yes," she said honestly, "but he didn't run away." She looked at Dane standing nearby. He stayed. The children smiled. They saw her not as a hero or a monster, but as someone like them. That night, Nova walked alone. Through the fields, she looked up at the stars, remembering everything: the cage, the fire, the escape, the fear, and the hand that reached out. She raised her own hand now, and the stars seemed to glow a little brighter. From deep space, colonies watched her. Some still feared her, but more and more began to believe in her, not because of what she could do, but because of what she had become. She was not just a survivor of Project Echo. She was proof that humanity could change. She was not built. She was not owned. She was chosen by herself, by the people, by the stars. Back at her cabin, Dane was reading a report from one of the distant outposts. More survivors were found, children with strange minds, quiet gifts, others like Nova, hidden for years. He showed her the message when she returned. There are more, she said, eyes wide. Maybe. Dane said, or maybe you were just the first to find her voice. Nova stood in silence for a moment, then said, then I have work to do. Dane smiled. You'll help them. Yes, she said. I'll show them what you showed me. What's that? That I'm not what they made me, Nova said. I'm what I choose to be. From that day forward, Nova began visiting the colonies. Not to lead, not to fight, but to listen, to heal. She was still young, still learning, but everywhere she went, people felt a little more human. One day, a statue was built in the center of New Haven Colony. It wasn't made of gold or stone. It was simple, just a figure of a girl holding a child's hand. On the base, it had no name, no title. Only words carved into the side. She was afraid and alone, but she gave hope to us all. Nova stood beside it. Years later, smiling as children played nearby. She didn't need statues. She didn't want praise. She had found what she needed. Not power, not safety, but choice, belonging, love, and in the end, that was what changed her. That was what changed the world.